So it's a pleasure to be here with you all to our meeting, and we are going to be talking today about religion as a relationship, the numinous and the sacred. So I'll just start sharing. Let me just... Is that okay? Yeah? Great. So as I sent to all of you in our WhatsApp group, I just made another model, actually a model of the presentation that Professor Lionel Corbett gave to us so we can study together. His talk about Jung's approach to spirituality and religion. And then after Professor Lionel Corbett presentation, then I will just bring to you what Joanna's contributions, okay? So, okay, so what he talks about consciousness and the unconscious. So Professor Corbett says that Jung's model of the psyche comprises different levels of consciousness and unconscious. At the forefront is ego consciousness, which represents our conscious awareness and the sense of self, of who we are, okay? This is the part of our psyche that we are more familiar with in our daily lives. I'll just... we are most familiar with in our daily lives. Beneath the surface of consciousness lies the personal unconscious. This level contains repressed material, as Freud states, okay, that exists below what Jung termed the repression barrier. These are thoughts, memories, and experiences that have been pushed out of conscious awareness, but remain accessible under certain conditions. At the deepest level of the psyche, Jung posited the existence of the autonomous or transpersonal unconscious, what we call the collective, in popular language, the collective unconscious. This profound layer is considered the source of religious experience and represents the spiritual dimension of the psyche. It is here that Jung believed the numinous encounters and transformative experiences originate. So we have this very clear model that Lionel Corbett gives us when he talks about conscious and levels of the unconscious. So we say here in the very top of the wave, let's think of an ocean and this triangle being a wave. So in the top is the ego consciousness. And this is the repressed barrier. So repressed personal unconscious material below the repression barrier. And on the bottom, the level of the autonomous or transpersonal unconscious. This is the source of religious experience. It is the spiritual dimension of the psyche. So for in the psychological world, let's say, development that we have had in the past decades, actually from last century on, let's say, or the end of the 19th century, to be more precise, the psychologists and psychiatrists, because he was both, who talks about in academic language about this level, this deeper level of the psyche, is called Gustav Jung, okay? And he is the scientist and the psychologist that finds, let's say, in the deepest level of the psyche of our unconscious, the collective unconscious, as we have seen in previous meetings. So people who have not been participating in these meetings can go to Bournemouth Society YouTube channel and just look for these meetings there, where we talk about the collective unconscious, okay? So this is very important to understand that why Jung is still to this day in the universities and even in psychological field. When we are talking about science, he's still not totally accepted, because when we are talking about deeper levels of our unconscious, so of course he tells us that we are talking about a transpersonal, beyond the personal, beyond the ego. So a transpersonal unconscious. And Lionel Corbett reminds us that Jung says that this level of the unconscious of our psyche is the source of religious experience in any language, any country of the world, any culture, okay? In these deepest levels of the psyche, we are all together. We share a religious experience, experience in a sense of a religious function in the psyche. The ability that our psyche, individually and collectively, have of producing religious experience. That's why even science nowadays, okay, and we have many scientific researches about near-death experiences, deathbed visions, anomalous experiences. So we have many researches going on from the last 30 years, 20 for sure, in neurosciences even, okay, with neuroimaging that show all these researches are coming to the conclusion that Jung was right, that in the deepest level of the psyche, we have this transpersonal dimension that is the source of religious experience. That's why, in opposition to what Freud said, religion's thought, religion's dimension in our psyche is not going to disappear, people, okay? It's not the materialistic point of view of the world and even of science is falling apart, because our own evolution and the evolution of science itself is demonstrating that Jung was correct in his view of the psyche, each time more, okay? So let's go on. So in this model, Professor Corbett says that shows like an ocean, okay? We have a blue ocean with many waves to demonstrate that many individuals in relation to the transpersonal psyche, okay? And he says that all human beings participate in this deep level of the psyche. So imagery from any religious tradition may emerge within the individual psyche. This is the spiritual dimension of the psyche. It is the source of numinous experiences of the divine. We are going to see a little more about that. So, or experience of the sacred, okay? So many individuals in relation to the transpersonal psyche, when we talk about that, we are talking just to clarify that all human beings participate in this deep level of the psyche. Imagery from any religious tradition may emerge within the individual psyche, and we see this a lot in people's dreams, okay? This is the spiritual dimension of the psyche. It is the source of numinous experience or experiences of the sacred. So Lionel Corbett brings to us Rudolf Otto's contributions, okay? If you guys want to look at Eranos seminars, Eranos, ERANOS, that took place, and Jung was there with Rudolf Otto and a lot of Wolfgang Pauli from quantum physics, the Nobel Prize. A lot of people met in the 20th century, in the beginning of the 20th century, or the middle, many, and it still goes on to these days, to our days, the Eranos seminars in Switzerland, to talk about, philosophy, psychology, spirituality, religion. And so Jung talks about Rudolf Otto's contributions when he talks about the sacred, Rudolf Otto's book from 1917. I'm not going to try to say in German because I don't know how to speak, but the name would be The Sacred, okay, his book. So Rudolf Otto was a Lutheran theologian. He introduced the term Numinous in his work about the sacred, and this concept was used to describe direct experiences of the sacred or the holy. Examples of numinous experiences are, for instance, Moses at the burning bush, Saul's experience on the road to Damascus, Job's experience of the divine appearing in a whirlwind. And the etymology of the word, the term numinous is derived from the Latin word numen, which means divinity. So the quality of the numinosum. Otto believed that the numinous experiences can be recognized by their special emotional quality. They are experiences of the mysterium tremendum et fascinans. This is in Latin, okay? A mystery that is at once overwhelming and fascinating. The experience is described in terms such as awesome, dreadful, terrifying, ineffable, uncanny, and an experience of radical otherness and dread. In the face of such power and mystery, the individual feels very small, producing a creature feeling or a sense of the uncanny. Often there is a sensation of blessing or grace, or at times the experience may produce terror. Sometimes these experiences produce a religious conversion. So we can think, I would like you to go back in your head, okay, in the image of the ocean and of us as waves in the oceans, in this ocean. So imagine the top of the wave, our ego, a very small part of the wave, on the top of the wave, receiving information from this depths of this ocean. Can you imagine that? So of course the information would get would come to this top, okay, the tiny part of ourselves, I'm sorry to say, the ego is a very small part of the psyche. So to connect to this information, of course, it would produce an experience that it's mysterious, fascinating, and overwhelming. Can you imagine that? Let's put ourselves in the road to Damascus, for instance. Being Saul of Tarsus, killing Christians, right? Persecuting Christians because they would go against the way of his world vision, let's say, the way he interpreted his religion and the way through which he had lived. And suddenly this light, this very strong light that blinded him, okay, appeared in front of him. So he falls from his horse, right? And he was overwhelmed not only by the power of this light, by the emotion that he felt. Remember, the numinosum, the contact with the numinosum. So a numinous experience has a special emotional quality, okay? So can you imagine that? The power of this experience and the way that he would be terrified and fascinated by it. And so much so that he says at some point, it's not me that live anymore. It's the Christ that lives inside myself, or something like that, okay? So because he felt totally transformed by this experience and had a religious conversion, okay? So this is a very well-known example, historical and biblical example that we can have of an profound experience of the numinous, the numinosum, so a numinous experience that made Saul of Tarsus become Paul of Tarsus, okay, the apostle. So characteristics of numinous experiences. Numinous experiences cannot be produced intentionally. We cannot make them appear, for instance, and they cannot be controlled. Otto believed that these experiences are qualitatively unlike any other experience. They are a priori, an innate mental category, and they cannot be understood rationally. Numinous experience is primarily a feeling. So keep that in mind. It's primarily a feeling. Jung's use of Otto's concept, so in his 1937 Terry Lectures on the Psychology of Religion at Yale University, Jung points out that he's hearing this kind of experiences in his consulting room. People would look for Jung, they would make appointments because they didn't have anyone to talk to about these experiences. Of course, they wouldn't look for Freud, for instance, because Freudians probably would say that the person would be having some kind of neurological or even psychotic-like episode, okay? So people all over Europe and even United States at that point, that Jung was already a very well-known psychiatrist and developing his analytical psychology, would look for Jung and make appointments with Jung to talk about this kind of experiences. These experiences do not necessarily take a traditional form. The only important criterion to recognize the nature of the experience is its emotional quality, not its specific content, okay? It doesn't matter much the content, as much so as the emotional quality of the experience. Mythological imagery from any religious tradition may appear, not necessarily from the subject's personal religion. So differences between Jung and Otto. So the source of numinous experiences, for Jung, numinous experiences arise from the transpersonal unconscious or the objective psyche. And for Otto, however, attributes them to experiences of the Judeo-Christian God. Jung believed they represent contact with the transpersonal self, an a priori image of the divine in the psyche, which may take various forms. Jung believed that the Numinosum may appear in a completely novel way that would not be accepted by traditional theists. For Jung, these manifestations are forms of individual revelation, because remember, all these contents have to surface to our personal wave, our personal psyche, our ego consciousness, right? So, of course, these manifestations are forms of individual revelation, but that in a deeper level, we all share the development of all this archetypal manifestation in the depths of our psyche. So, and about location of the divine, for Otto, numinous experience arises from the holy other. But for Jung, there is a God image in the psyche. So the divine is more in here than out there in heaven. Okay? So the healing effect of the numinosum. Jung believed that the numinous experiences have a profound healing effect on individuals. In fact, he wrote that his main interest was the approach to the numinosum, and the approach to the numinous is the real therapy. So pay attention to that. In Jung's words, the approach to the numinous is the real therapy. These experiences typically address a significant issue in the subject's life, whether it be a current life crisis or a long-standing emotional difficulty. The healing power of numinous experiences seems to stem from their intense emotional impact. If there's not an intense emotional impact, we cannot consider a numinous experience, okay? They often provide a deeper, transformative encounter that can help individuals overcome psychological obstacles and find new meaning in their lives, okay? So pay attention that an encounter with the numinosum, a numinous experience has, according to Jung, a healing effect. So William James, a very known American psychologist that we consider that started the study of religious phenomena in the psyche. So William James criteria, he says that the numinous experience has an ineffable quality. The experience is ineffable. It is very difficult to express its quality in words. Has a noetic nature. So the experience is noetic. It gives new information. It has a transient duration. The experience is transient, okay, it's not permanent. The subject is passive, So the subject is passive, not in control of the experience. In the literature on mysticism, many authors have described a range of criteria for the recognition of numinous experiences. In his varieties, William James used these 4 criteria as outlined above. So being ineffable, having, it's very difficult to express its qualities, noetic, bringing a new information, it is transient, the duration, okay, it's not going to last for long, and the subject is passive. The importance of the ego. This is very important to pay attention. Jung believes one must not totally submit to numinous experiences. The ego must take a stand in relation to the experience. We need a mature ego because otherwise the person can suffer a lot, okay? And maybe it's going to have, the person will have the numinous experience, but will not be able to deal in a sense, in a way that it can have this healing effect, totally at least. So Jung recognized numinous experiences may cause fragmentation of the personality in vulnerable people. He advises against identifying with the experience, which could lead to inflation. This is very important also. Instead, Jung suggests trying to relate to the experience and express it individually, such as through writing or painting. I get very worried, and we can talk about that when we exchange ideas after this PowerPoint presentation, with some stuff that I hear in YouTube, and that I get to know in social medias, because I'm not in social medias, but we always get to know what people are talking about, and especially in YouTube channels. There are a lot of people that don't know about psychology, okay, keep like talking about things that we could interpret as developing ways to get, not that they are going to talk about numinous experiences in this way, because usually it's only people that know psychology that can talk about that, or Jung, but they talk similar things about, spiritual evolving and having and channeling and having contact with spiritual dimensions as something that would just have a walk in the park or have some training, some very quick courses, and then we are going to have some transformative experiences. And pay attention of the importance of the ego. We can have an inflation of the ego. That's the least of the problems. There are lots of people with ego, inflated ego nowadays, right? But this is the least of the problems. The most problematic thing, I think, is that listening to what Jung is talking to us, that the ego must take a stand in relation to the experience, because Jung recognized that numinous experience may cause fragmentation. This is psychosis, okay? This is a psychotic-like episode that if the person has some genetic probability or, some kind of vulnerability, the person could, this experience could cause fragmentation. And he advised against identifying with this experience. And also he was suggesting that we should try to relate to the experience, expressing it individually, reflecting upon it, maybe talking to someone that has experience. Doesn't have to be a therapist, but could be a therapist. Many people look for different types of therapies because they are suffering with some kind of experience like this. We call like a spiritual crisis or spiritual awakening, okay, that these experiences can bring. So criticism of Otto, traditional theologians have expressed reservations about describing the holy in terms of numinous experiences, as this approach could potentially be applied to the gods of any pantheon. This criticism highlights the concern that Otto's concept may lack specificity to a particular religious tradition. Otto faces criticism for his assertion that numinous experiences is always the result of contact with the divine. Critics argue that this assumption lacks empirical basis, suggesting that Otto essentially discovers what he sets out to find. They contend that numinous experiences could have alternative causes, such as encounters with the natural world. Skeptics question Jung's claim that numinous experience emerges from the objective psyche. Materialists often reduce profound numinous experience, such as that of St. Paul, to more mundane explanations like transient psychosis, epilepsy, or an overactive imagination. And that would be really silly. I don't even like like a psychiatrist, I don't even consider this kind of explanation. It's very silly. And it doesn't stand in scientific grounds nowadays, okay? So Capps proposes a psychological interpretation, suggesting that the mystery and power experienced during a numinous event may be attributed to the reemergence of childhood experiences of being terrorized by one's mother. This theory attempts to explain the sense of dread and feeling of being overpowered or annihilated that often accompanies numinous experiences. If we think about the ego and the top of the wave, of course, we can think that the ego have already felt something similar in childhood, okay? But to reduce the experience of childhood experiences is very, very, very silly. I'm sorry, because it's like the transformation of Saul of Tarsus, for instance, in the Apostle Paul, with everything that he has written about after this encounter, all the wisdom, all the good that he brought to this world would be, really silly to talk about childhood experiences in this sense. But of course, the ego is present in the experience, and the ego suffers, of course, with the complexes related to it. But let's not forget that when we have a numinous experiences, usually and frequently the ego it's very low in the attention span, and in all the ego relation to the world, it's something so big that all the characteristics of the ego, all the functions of the ego are very low, and we are in an altered state of consciousness, we could say. So Erickson offers a contrasting view, tracing the origin of positively tuned numinous experiences to infantile experiences of recognition and affirmation by a loving mother who greets and lifts up her child. Despite these reductive explanations, good or bad in a sense, the experiences themselves remain irrefutable. They are profoundly meaningful events that can radically affect the subject, potentially altering their worldview or initiating a religious calling. Given their quality, many individuals find no reason to doubt that these are genuine experiences of a transpersonal reality. Otto believed that language is inadequate to describe numinous experiences. which are ineffable. He argued that these experiences can only be described using analogies or symbols such as fire. This idea faced criticism from those who believe that the experience and the language we use to describe it are inseparable. However, mystics often claim that their experiences cannot be described in conventional language and are meaningful at a non-verbal level, which may be more important than the level that can be spoken. Another aspect of Otto's theory that drew criticism was his belief that numinous experiences are unmediated, free of cultural conditioning or coloring by the subject's tradition. This is a controversial assumption, with some critics arguing that all mystical experience is mediated. The subject always brings his or her own concepts and beliefs to the experience. However, clinical experience suggests a different perspective, indicating that symbolic material from any religious tradition may appear with no relation to the subject's background. Remember that I told you that usually the ego is in altered state, okay? We have usually an altered state of consciousness. So modalities of numinous experiences, dreams and synchronicities, for instance. Numinous experiences typically occur in dreams or synchronicities, offering a gateway to the unconscious and the divine. Waking visions, less commonly, numinous experiences may manifest as waking visions, providing direct encounters with the transcendent, as happened with Paul. Natural world, some people experience the numinous in the natural world, finding profound spiritual connections in the beauty of nature. And bodily experiences, the numinous can also be experienced by means of the body, highlighting the interconnection between physical and spiritual realms. And here, Professor Lionel brings a numinous dream. So he talks about a woman, sorry. So a woman whose mother was devaluing, withholding, and critical of her and her body had the following dream. I am in a glass elevator that has no visible cables. It is heading up into space. The sky is clear blue, and I can see for hundreds of miles. I am pressed up against a group of beautiful, otherworldly women who are swaying and singing a mesmerizing melody. We are naked. They lift me up, they hold me, stroke me, and embrace me. They sing of love, compassion, and forgiveness. There is a feeling of intimacy. They begin dripping honey on me, which feels loving and sweet. I am filled with incredible peace and joy beyond words or descriptions. Of course, there are lots of symbols here. And we are not going to have time to go through all of them, but you can, listening to this meeting later on, think about all these symbols, the honey, and remember that all the symbols in somebody's dreams are related to the person who is dreaming, okay? So lots of women, and we know that this woman had a devaluating mother, of course, so the mother complex were very, very negative, and she, of course, had been working in this complex. And remember, in the center of all our complexes, we find an archetypal image, archetypal meaning, okay? So, of course, when we are working in a therapy analysis or other ways of working with our unconscious material, subjects and images and dreams and symbols, we, of course, work with our personal issues, okay, our complexes from the personal unconscious, but of course in the Jungian psychology, in the depth psychology of Jung, analytical psychology, we go deeper in this archetypal level, this transpersonal level of the psyche. And then many times we have dreams like this that have a powerful numinous quality and a healing quality, but also address something personal, okay, for the individual. So we have the honey, we have the women, we have compassion and forgiveness and love. Okay, these are very spiritual values. And a feeling of intimacy. So we could imagine that this person is already in connection with herself, capital S, okay? And the numinous and the healing effect, look at the last sentence. I'm filled with incredible peace and joy beyond words or description. So this numinous dream directly addressed her emotional difficulties and had a powerfully healing effect. It meets Otto's criteria. It is mysterious, tremendous, and fascinating. But the imagery has no particular relation to the Judeo-Christian tradition. These kinds of numinous experience are effectively powerful, which is why they are helpful, since the thing that cures a neurosis must be as convincing as the neurosis. And since the latter is only too real, right, the helpful experience must be equally real. So in conclusion to this presentation of Professor Lionel Corbett, Jung's approach to spirituality and religion emphasizes the importance of personal experience and the numinous. The numinous experience can have a profound healing effect on individuals. Jung's work bridges the gap between psychology and spirituality, offering a unique perspective on human consciousness. His idea continued to influence modern psychology and our understanding of the human psyche. So let's go on to Joannei de Angelis' perspective on religion as a relationship, the numinous and the sacred. So her contributions, it's in the book In Search of Truth, chapter 6, okay? It's all Joannei now. So the paradox of progress. So Joannei says about scientific advancements that incomparable achievements in various areas of knowledge and contemporary thought have brought countless blessings to life in all its expressions on earth. Regrettably, however, the two great perverse wars that marked the 20th century, whose painful effects contemporary society still experiences to these days, provided demonstrations on primitivism and moral backwardness of human creatures. On one side, the evolution of science and technology, and on the other, isolation from the social group, drastic change regarding life and its meaning in the face of lying standards elected as ideas for well-being and happiness. Let's pay, very much, attention to this to what Joanna is saying. She was talking about existential crisis that we are living in nowadays, okay? And that we have all this evolution in science and technology, but at the same time, we have isolation from our social groups, sometimes from our own families, with all this dissociation about different points of view of different topics, and drastic changes regarding life and its meaning in the face of lying standards elected as ideas for well-being and happiness. Pay attention to that. And she talks about the digital dilemma, okay? And she says that the extraordinary virtual contribution facilitated communication. At the same time, the sum of nonsense and stimuli to violence, hatred, racism, crime, suicide, changes in conduct, stuns and dominates unsuspecting or less morally resistant internet users. The rapid pace of time, driven by the need to participate in everything, to stay informed about occurrences, suffocates about, freedom of thought and movement. So the rapid pace of time suffocates freedom of thought and movement, culminating in stormy anxiety and painful frustration, pushing its defenseless victims towards the abyss of depression or rebellion. And don't we see this happening in our days? At least people from psychology, I myself as a psychiatrist, as Jungiana, see this every day in my clinical work. So Joanna says that the lack of verbal and written communication of human contact free from suspicion and dazzlement leads people towards egotistical interests. As a spurious result of this unhealthy and meaningless postmodernity, continuous mood changes and the abandonment of ethical commitments which give meaning to life perfectly characterize this phase of uncertainties. So she talks about postmodern malaise, we could say, as a spurious result of this unhealthy and meaningless postmodernity, where we have a lack of human connection, in spite of the fact that we are all the time connected. It seems that we are all the time connected to our mobiles and social media and so on. But we suffer from this continuous mood changes and the abandonment of ethical commitments, which give meaning to life, perfectly characterized this phase of uncertainties. So the lack of identification between the ego and the self, capital S, our inner self, let's say, our higher self, produces a lack of discernment regarding existence and how to proceed, allowing the domination of the ignored shadow in all behaviors. Okay, so what Joanne is saying, that lack of human connection, this postmodern malaise, ethical decline, brings inner conflict. And in inner conflict, she characterized as the lack of identification between the ego and the self. Remember ego-self axis that we have talked about in previous meetings. So the ego and the self, and produces a lack of discernment regarding existence and how to proceed, allowing the domination of the ignored shadow in all behaviors. So she says that this individual and collective experience that we are living nowadays, however, is essential for the maturation and evolution of human beings who have separated from themselves, seeking outside the joy that is only found within. Naturally, there are countless efforts towards moral elevation and dignification of human beings, still insufficient, however, to lead the great masses of people to the path of discernment and true health. These noble examples of fidelity to duty and the continuation of uplifting actions contribute to balancing the moral scale of the human planet, with outstretched arms to assist the fallen, to minimize the despair of the failed, and to show solidarity with those abandoned by deceitful triumph. They demonstrate that humanity is destined for ascension, and that the lower stage in which it finds pleasure is transitory, however long it may last, providing experiential opportunities for the construction of individuation. Remember the concept of individuation that we have studied, for us to become whole, okay? To become the best versions of ourselves and balance the different forces within us, you know, with harmony and with spiritual values. So Joanna says, when she talks about the search for meaning, that inevitably human beings carry the myth of meaning, and even when unable to identify it, there comes a moment when the anesthetizing cloud of pleasure disappears before the sun of reality. Pay attention, everyone. Behold, driving them towards internal advancement and the understanding of the message of living and growing psychologically. The lack of focus on important issues of the inner being has contributed to the triumph of futility and ignorance of one's own reality, supposing existence to be this deceptive, fantastic journey through the land of golden haste, where everything is of ephemeral duration, preventing reflection and the encounter with consciousness, with the self, capital S, our higher being. This is so important, people. I'll read it again for people who are not able to look at the PowerPoint, okay, and are just listening to this presentation. The lack of focus on important issues of the inner being has contributed to the triumph of futility and ignorance of one's own reality, supposing existence to be this deceptive, fantastic journey through the land of golden haste, where everything is of ephemeral duration, preventing reflection and the encounter with consciousness, with the self. Look what the lack of focus is leading us to. Pay attention to that. This stubborn shadow manages to separate us from the divine self that exists within each of us and of which we are constituted, making it necessary to transmute this inferior material through an emotional alchemical process to truly find existential meaning. Keeping in mind the presence of the shadow in order to overcome it becomes an urgent psychological necessity. I think the search for meaning in this slide, please go back to it and read deeply, read again and again, and reflect upon it because it's precious, precious. This Joanna's words are all so important, but this is precious, okay? This, when she talks about the search for meaning, is the center, the core, the heart of her teachings about the Numinous, okay? So no one can live in a healthy way without the internal work of integrating religious faith with reason, in a stimulating harmony to face the inevitable struggles of daily life, drawing confidence in difficult moments and renewing courage in the face of the threat of discouragement. Okay, so we need to renew our strength, integrating faith and reason. It is impossible, definitely, to live without the feeling of eternal concepts, those that give dignity to human beings, providing them with ethics and morality to remain faithful to existential objectives. Legitimate psychotherapy aims to lead the individuals to the rediscovery of their reality, their spiritual origin, existential purpose, their immortal future, which become foundations of security for continuous struggles, avoiding the projection of their conflicts onto other. Okay? So this is so beautiful. When Jesus stated that it is necessary to take up his cross and follow him, he proposed, according to Joanna, the conquest of self-awareness. The psyche needs transcendent support to provide dignifying elements through the reality in which everyone is immersed, choosing those that are most compatible with the aspirations and possibilities of execution. Everyone depends on God because, after all, we are immersed in God, and it is necessary to recognize him in us so that we manifest him through our emotional behavior and social, family, spiritual actions. I won't give you spoilers, but next year or pretty soon, because it's only a couple of months ahead, when we have our Joannei de Angelis International Congress in London, I will bring to you, very up-to-date researches, scientific and very important researches in the field of psychiatry that really kind of prove what Joanna is saying. This is so beautiful when she talks about, when in the first sentence, she says, when Jesus stated that it is necessary to take up his cross and follow him, he proposed the conquest of self-awareness. And science is getting there, people, but I'm not going to give you spoilers. Let's wait for the Congress. So when asked if he believed in God, Jung replied with humility and wisdom that he did not need to believe, stating, I know I don't need to believe. This is in the YouTube channel, I think it has, or in the internet, you can Google it, in the movie Face to Face, an interview with Jung very late in his life, okay? This statement highlights the difference between intellectual understanding and personal experience of the divine. Jung's response reflects his deep understanding of the human psyche and its connection to the transcendent. So the essence of religion, according to this is all Joanna, okay? Even when she's talking about Jung. The essence of religion, every religion, Joanna says, in its profound meaning, aims to reconnect the creature to its creator, which would represent establishing the full ego self access, the apparent being with the real one, providing conditions of health and peace. So in conclusion, the path to spiritual evolution. So as we have seen, Joanna says that the journey of spiritual growth involves rediscovering one's true self and connection to the divine, that we need balance of faith and reason. So integrating religion's faith with reason provides a foundation for navigating life's challenge. And about manifestation of the divine, she says that recognizing and manifesting the divine within ourselves leads to a more fulfilling and purposeful existence. So we will stop sharing now. And we have very little time for discussion and debate because we want to have a practical, let's say, exercise. I think it's so, so important, and I'm so happy and thank all of you because now the class is kind of full. We have a lot of people watching us. But I would love for like Anne, Sylvia, Denise, and maybe Bob, Lolita, and everybody else that wants to make a comment. We are going to have more meetings because we have to, right? We decided in the beginning of this meeting because in August we had problems and could meet. So I think it's very important for you to reflect upon everything that we have said today. And maybe, if you all agree, next meeting we could like exchange ideas, okay? Because I don't want people in Europe. Here is late afternoon and Sunday, and I'm okay. But I know that you guys in Europe are, at night and could get tired. So if we have like 5 minutes, and then I will give actually 4 minutes, and I will give to Lolita that it's going graciously to help us through an exercise about the Numinosul and the sacred. So does anybody want to, I can see hands up, Sylvia, to make a small comment or question? Go ahead.
Oh, thank you first, because it was so interesting, so wonderful to study and go back again, which I would do. Thank you for this lesson. Just very briefly, when you talk about Numinous experience, and she was sort of talking to you and listening to your talks and everything, that I realized I actually have had this kind of experience more than once, and one that I can remember really, really well, and today resonate with me quite a lot, because it was when I was in Egypt. The first time I stopped in front of the Sphinx, I had this thing like almost like present, future, and it's just one thing. It was so powerful, I could hardly breathe for a few minutes because it was so intense. And I could relate so much because the ego is completely disappear. And also it's something so strong that I was shaking for quite a long time after that. And, when he talks about you need to have a strong ego because you can get lost, because the experience is so bombastic, it's so fast. And it's just for a split of second, it's like you into, past, present, future, everything in one, and thought is just one thing. It was extremely powerful. And then when I get into, it was inside one of the pyramids that I went in, I had as well a very big experience there, but I never knew that it was, and I had another one as well, which I won't talk to you about this now, but I could relate to this. It's interesting that every now and then in our lives, we do have those experiences, just that we don't know. And I think it's so important for us to be aware, because those experiences, what shapes our lives, it becomes the compass in the life that we want to lead, doesn't it? So anyway, thank you for that. I just wanted to share that with you.
Thanks so much, Sylvia, and I'm quite sure, and the way you told us about it, it had a healing effect, right? As Jung said. Thanks so much for sharing. I think Deborah, and then we will just give to Lolita. Deborah, you want to
Yes,
ask some
Anahy,
question?
Yeah, I'm sorry, I have my camera is closed because I'm a little ill. It's just a quick question, Anahy. So, when you have this kind of experience, right, this kind of like Numinous experience, is it common that after having this, blow, moment that you might, feel ill? Because I was just wondering, because it's such a powerful experience. Because you mentioned about this kind of like psychic fragmentation, but I was also wondering if it would be, expected or normal, or, if you had this kind of experience and afterwards you find yourself like a little bit ill or, having some kind of like healthy issues. Just a question.
Okay, thank you, Deborah. Yes, you could follow you in a sense, at least for many people, it brings a kind of suffering, especially, and well, I don't want to tell you that, oh, everybody should be here, but of course, I think everybody should be kind of, especially these days that we know from different traditions, we are evolving in consciousness, right? And a lot of people all around the globe, and we have to understand this, are having what we call a spiritual awakening, okay? So this spiritual awakening, Deborah, and everybody else, many times brings conflict and brings suffering. Because if the ego is not paying attention, is not studying, is not, in a study group like this, or is not in connection with something on a daily basis with some kind of meditation, reading something that it's inspiring in a spiritual sense. It doesn't matter, even the spiritual tradition or religion, but we are talking about this, if we are, as we have had a lot of communications throughout, many in the past and in the present, through many spiritual traditions that say that we are in a new era, that we are in a spiritual awakening, and that we are heading towards a more spiritual world. And we don't know when we are going to have enough people awaken spiritually, to make this shift, let's say, in consciousness globally. But we are heading, I'm quite sure, in this direction. Okay, it's not in exactly, maybe not in my lifetime that I'm going to here in material world to watch, all this globally awakening. But I'm very happy to be here with all of you and with this Joannei de Angelis community and family, and sharing thoughts and spiritual thoughts with all of you, and evolving in a sense, thinking about all these kind of topics, because we are helping the collective unconsciousness people. We are enriching this transpersonal dimension. Each of us that awaken, let's say, even as if Deborah is asking us and remind us, we can suffer a little bit. And but Deborah and everybody else, I think we can. As a psychiatrist, I can tell you that if we are doing the homework that Joannei is calling us to do, right? If we are thinking about all of this, meditating, praying, in talking with our communities and, you know, with friends and family about this kind of topics, we are for sure maturing our egos, right? And we are getting a stronger ego. I'm trying not to give spoilers of what I will bring to you in the Congress, but I will make sure to tell you about all the research in psychiatry that are proving that a more evolved in spiritually speaking person is more mature and have a more stronger ego. So we can be in peace that even if we have a numinous, a very potent numinous experience for, let's say, you go to sleep now in Europe because I have many hours ahead and have a numinous dream, you are not going to, you know, to be psychotic or anything. I can promise you that in our study group, because you are already in contact. And remember, reason and faith, you are already integrating this conversation that we are having between our egos and between our higher selves, between ourselves, capital S. So when we integrate this in a psychological, mature, healthy way, okay, and mature way, we are not going to have any kind of problems. And besides that, we are going to get stronger and healthier. I'm so sorry, but we want Lolita, and she has been a prayer group. So if people that have the raised hands can write to Fabricio or me or myself or Mariana, and then ask your questions, I will see that we can either put in the WhatsApp group, okay? Or we keep it for the other meeting. Is that okay for you? That? Okay. So Lolita, please. I don't know where you have gone. I can
I'm here.
cannot see.
I'm here. I'm here.
Okay. So the meeting is yours.
So what exactly would you like me to share?
I would like to talk to all that are listening to us about the prayer groups.
Okay.
And just lead us through a prayer, if you
Will
can.
do. May I?
We are going to record this.
What do you think, Lolita? Is your call? Should we stop recording or go ahead?
You can stop recording because it might not be relevant to the study itself. It's just to us who are here at the moment.
Okay, so bye-bye everyone that is listening to us. Next time, be present so that you don't miss the exercise part. Bye-bye.
Okay.